There we go. Here we go. And more races, because that's what we're doing here. We got Will Edwards in today from for running for School Board District 4. We'll talk about that here a little bit. We're almost in agreement at gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, on Twitter, and on YouTube. You can go to our website, almostinagreement.com. I've got my job description sheet. I'm still working on that. If you have any corrections, suggestions, or anything, please email me. And then I have my voter guide, which is going to have a list of everybody running for each seat, have links to their website and the interview that I've done with them, as well as links to KGIS and Knox County Election Commission. So if you have any questions about your voter status and stuff like that, you can go to the Election Commission for that, or KGIS to know which district you're in, as well as where your polling location is and stuff like that. Those guys down at the Election Commission are pretty good, so they'll help you out. Get us on your favorite podcast provider. Like us there. Follow us there. Give us a 5-star review. Tell your friends about us. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. A little bit of Instagram is another action place for us. And we're going to keep running it through. And we're going to get all these candidates in here that are willing to give me the time of day. And we're going to move on from there. So Will Edwards today. And we're going to let this intro run out. And we'll talk to Will. All right, Will, how you doing, buddy?
Doing well, Seth. Thanks for having me on. You've been a busy fellow the last few weeks.
I am trying my darndest. Yeah, like we were talking about in the pre-show, this is a specifically huge ballot because we have all the judges and the DA and the public defender and all these other seats that are only 8-year ones that we only get every 8 years, and so they're all piled in on top of what seems to me at least a more contentious set of races than in the past of the more standard races, our commission, our mayor, and a school board especially, given we just got announcement last night this morning on our new superintendent, and then all the other stuff that's been going on in school board right now, and we throw on top that they're now partisan races as opposed to the old version that we used to do. So you had all that going on, but it's the first time we've met. I guess full disclosure, I am a District 4 voter. You are running for District 4, so you get to try to sell to me directly as well as the entirety of the audience. It's the first time we've met. It's the first time we've done a show together. Give me the brief history of Will and how you got from a wee little baby to the man in front of me seeking office.
Sure. We'll back up about 20 years. So I'm a Tennessee native. Grew up in Jackson, Tennessee. My wife and I are both from Jackson. Graduated from high school there. I actually went to college there as well at Lambuth University. Graduated with a degree in accounting and management. Had worked during my undergraduate studies in a CPA firm, practiced for a year in a CPA firm, and then went to law school. So spent 3 years in law school, went on to tax law school as well, and landed in Knoxville, thankfully, in the middle of a recession when there weren't any tax law jobs to be had around the country. So we were blessed to land here. My wife has extended family here in Knoxville, and we've been here since 2009. It feels like home, and we love the mountains and the lakes and the beauty of East Tennessee. My wife and I have 2 boys, a 5th grader and a 3rd grader, 11 and 9 years old. And we'll get into that in a moment as to why we're in the race, but they're a big part of that dynamic as well. So I practice law here in Knoxville with the law firm of Long, Ragsdale, and Waters, and represent a lot of families in the 4th District, work with a lot of businesses, families in estate planning, charitable planning, corporate type work as well. So blessed to be a Knoxvillian at this point.
And we need to have a whole separate conversation off air about taxes and stuff like that.
Sure, absolutely.
Because right now, according to my accountant at least, the IRS will only acknowledge this as a hobby. So all these microphones and my internet service and all the different stuff that I do to do the show is not... I can't write that off as a business expense because they won't let me make it a business.
Yeah, with all the work you've been doing over the last month, we've got to make this a business.
I agree,
for
right?
You,
We got to. I got to at least be able to not lose or write off the losses at minimum is the goal, because right now there's no income, so that's a whole separate thing. But okay, and so like you alluded to it with the kids, and because my general follow up question to the brief bio of you is why now? Why this race particularly? Have you decided to jump into this race specifically?
Sure. So really 2 reasons, and some of this is bio as well, but I'll answer directly and then circle back to the bio piece as well. So I'm a first-generation college graduate. My parents didn't have the opportunity to go to college, very blue-collar, hard-working folks, and they impressed upon me the importance of opportunities ahead. Now, we'll talk about CTE, military, and other paths that I think are very important, but being a college graduate has allowed me to enjoy the successes in life and the practice that I have in the practice of law. So number one is just having that opportunity and making that opportunity available, whatever pathway the student may progress down post high school. Number two is my children have some pretty unique challenges. I've got, as I said earlier, a fifth grader and a third grader. And with those challenges, we were forced to interface with the school system pretty quickly,
Right.
whether that was teachers, administrators, central office. When you have challenges, a lot of times you kind of move up the food chain pretty quickly, and administrators are brought in from central office to have those conversations and try to determine how do we educate this child given those unique circumstances. So as part of that, we often found resistance in the system, and we are very engaged parents, very involved in the school system, very engaged with our children, and quickly realized there are a lot of families that were receiving similar resistance that would just give up.
Right.
So as the system pushed back on them, they didn't feel like they could express what their wishes were for their children, and they weren't really viewed as the expert on their own children. So we became a voice for a lot of other families in the community through that process, and that led to this. So those are the two reasons why that we're in this race.
Right, because I mean, I think I've had Virginia on a number of times, and I've liked her very much. And I not that you would want the challenge, but I was disappointed when she decided not to run again. And she has her reasons, and I've talked to her a little bit about that. And it's a weird dynamic that we're running into in this system, or maybe not weird. Maybe better use the word. It's a new dynamic that we have in this school board election system. That I don't know. There's part of me that it's always been there at some level. It's just literally a practical, like the letter is there and the primaries are a little different. That's
right.
I mean, so but anywho, so for me, what I'm trying to get across to this is this is an opportunity for me specifically because I am a voter in this race to get a better idea of you and what your goals and kind of top priorities are. And so I would like to just let you kind of go through, I've been on your website and your Facebook page and stuff like that, and you've got your kind of top list, top line things that you want to get in and get to work on.
Absolutely. So really, if you've been on our website, you've seen our 4 priorities that I really want to focus on. And one you've heard Dr. Roswick hit on both in his interviews last week and the interview before the board, as well as the public forum that was held at Bearden High, and that's literacy. So if we look at the literacy rates across the county, and I don't want to get too far in the weeds on data, but at the elementary level, only 38% roughly of our kids are on grade level in literacy.
And I mean, I've told this story a couple times on the show. My eldest is in 5th grade as well. We through pandemic stuff and just general stuff, he was getting a little bit. We were having some concerns, and so this year, beginning of this school year, we started him with a tutor, and maybe October somewhere in that. After a couple of weeks of working with this tutor gave him a 3rd grade assessment, and he squeaked through it as a 5th grader, And I've heard it from some other parents as well, is that we have kids that on the assessments are doing really poorly, but the grades are coming out okay. Now mine was a little bit more accurate, and so kudos to my teachers that we've had, because he is barely scraping by in class, and he's barely scraping by on the test, even though the test is a year past or a year before where he should be or whatever. But I've heard a lot of stories about kids being AB students and then still doing terribly on these specific assessments, and it's like, well, where's the disconnect here?
Right.
And so that's something I'm very curious to dig into as well. So anyway, continue. I interrupted.
No, and kudos to your teachers for recognizing that, even though the grades may have been there, that there were some deficiencies that could be worked on. So as part of that process, folks say, well, how do you turn literacy around? We've got almost 60,000 students in this system. So how do you turn that around for a 3rd grader? And I think there's a couple of things, I don't want to say low-hanging fruit, but items that we can work on quickly that will make a big impact. And some of these relate to, I hear you talk about, well, what's your job, and what's at the state level, what's at the federal level, what's the state school board do, what's the local school board do, and what's the Department of Ed do. And those are all very different legs of the stool, if you will. So some of this has some overlap. But I think with respect to literacy, one of the important things we can do is work on our intervention system. So if you look at the ESSER budgets that have come out with the ESSER-related funds, they've really got to focus on tutoring, which has an intervention component as well. But within our intervention system, frequently it's a tiered system. So a child is identified as needing some extra help. We put them in the intervention system, and it has various tiers. Well, no matter the level of deficiency, they're generally placed in the same tier. So we may recognize that a child has a huge level of deficiency in the classroom, but we're still going to put him in the same intervention system with everybody else.
Right.
And then I call it a wait and fail approach. So we put them through that tier, we test them, we see if they fail.
Right.
And of course, we know going in that they will. So I think one thing that we can do that could increase that literacy rate pretty quickly is identify the need of the child and not force them through the tiered system, but give the school and the team that's working with that child some discretion on making that decision. Do we go to the highest level of intervention out of the box? And there's a state Department of Ed component there as well. But our administrators at the central office tell me, no, we really want our principals and our teachers to have that discretion.
Right.
So communicating that discretionary piece of the intervention system, I think, is very important to our literacy rates. Because what we end up doing is we identify the deficiency or the need, and then we wait a year before we really get to the level of intervention we need.
Right.
Well, we don't have time to wait a year to get to the level of intervention.
Right, because by the time we get to the level we need, then we got 3-4 years of working on it, and now we got a junior in high school.
Exactly.
That's just now getting around to getting to be a good reader. I mean, I follow what you're saying on that one, because again, as you pointed out, there's this overlap of authority at play that I don't know about. Like, I try to know about, but I don't know about, and I guarantee my neighbors don't know about.
Right.
And they have their kids in this whole thing, and again, I think that's a core issue that I don't know exactly what the solution is on it, because I think there is a problem with not us as the public not understanding where to go with our issues,
right,
and how to address the issues, because I think right now with the masking thing specifically, and I don't want to go down a mask rabbit hole, but with the masking thing specifically, it's like, this is past. This is the school board meetings. I hate to put it this way, and I think people have their right to speak in a public forum setting or whatever, but it's an argument to no one. You're screaming at a wall, and if that's what you want to do, that's fine. Go do it at home and let the school board focus on what they can do right now, instead of being, because they passed this stupid, I don't know. Anyway, the commission's giving more money out, and more tax dollars are going to more lawyers who are going to achieve something, maybe, which, I mean, hell, by the time the new lawyers get around to figuring out what they're doing, the whole thing's going to be passed anyway. I mean, my day job just now dropped our mask mandate for employees. And most of the places I do for my day job have dropped their mandate for being in the building with masks and stuff like that. Eventually, this judge thing is going to come around, and we're just going to get it settled. But no, we're going to spend a couple $100 extra $1,000 on. Anyway, sorry, rant. But I do, again, to go back to the beginning of that rant, was that I think that we as the public need to figure out how to engage better with understanding who's where. And I think part of that does fall on school board and commission and stuff like that, about being specific when addressed. It's like, hey, it's not just being like, oh, it's not my job, but being like, that's not my job, and here's who is. Because, I mean, again, I think that's one of the things that at least some of the commissioners that I've talked to, they like to describe themselves as like switchboard operators, which I think is a great way to put it, is that a lot of stuff comes to them, but then they figure out how to help get the right direction. But I think schools is even dicier in that, because really, again, and I go on, this is one of my phrases that I like to say a lot, Knox County Schools is a poor title. It is Tennessee State Schools, Knox County.
Right.
And so other than a little bit of budgetary stuff like we got to see last night in the commission meeting, that's all that Knox County government gets to really put their hands in the school stuff. So again, just trying to, it is important to me to try to get to the bottom of some of the understanding of where the right authority lies. And I think these are some of the issues that get us there.
Absolutely, but I think it's also important for our school board members to have that connection with the central office staff, who has a great connection an important connection with our teachers.
Right.
So as that information comes back, here are the hurdles and here are the roadblocks. The school board members should be able to reach out to their legislatures or to the state board of ed. We've got 2 local members here, depending on what your congressional district here is in Knox County, that we could reach out to. And I think a collaborative.
Knox County Schools has a lobby group too.
That's
I
right.
believe so.
That's right.
Talking about spending money we don't have.
A collaborative effort there is important, and I think that may have been missing in recent years. I think it's important to get everybody back on the same page to work towards student achievement rather than all the other noise we've had to deal with the last 2 years.
Right. All right. So that's one. Literacy is the big number 1A on your list. Let's move on to number 2.
So number 2 is really CTE, so our career technical education related fields. I said earlier, university studies is not for everyone. I think we've done a disservice to a generation of students in trying to force them into that field. So I'm excited about some of the things that we're doing in Knox County, particularly the mayor's new school related to CTE and the trades and the joint venture there with the Contractors Association. So offering those pathways and exposing students to additional resources is important at an early age. So we can't wait until they're juniors and seniors in high school to expose them to these alternate pathways.
Right. What are you going to do with your life? I don't know.
Exactly.
I haven't thought about it. Well, that's what you've been doing for the last 12 years. We got to figure it out now.
Exactly. And I think that's part of our responsibility to the community is to ensure that they have those options available. Now in Knoxville, we've got Pellissippi, we've got TCAT, we've got the new, I'll call it the Mayor's School, and Mayor Jacobs' initiative there. So we've got great resources, and I think we can't offer all CTE courses in every high school. That's
right.
Not going to happen. But I think with our virtual resources, we can at least offer that exposure and the ability with ventures with Pellissippi and TCAT to offer those courses to students.
Right, and we were talking. We actually ended up accidentally sort of talking. We were talking a bunch about voucher stuff on the big show this weekend. But we kind of got sidetracked by Max, he's from Colorado, and he's sorry, buddy, but he's pushing 50. And he was talking about when he was in Colorado, you could go to any Colorado high school, or public high school,
right?
If you wanted to. You just say, I'm going to that school, and transportation was provided within what we would consider zoning. But outside of that, if you wanted to go to the other one, because he was big into wrestling when he was a kid, and there was one district over was the school that had the really good wrestling coach, and so he went there to go to high school. And athletics being, I don't know, arguably secondary, but maybe not, depending on the student. Like, it was a very interesting premise. Like, I got the idea, and like you're saying on the CTE, it's like not every kid's going to do it, not every school could cover it, but I would imagine that we could do some magnet setups with stuff like this and let individual schools have some level of specificity to let certain kids go there that may not be district for it,
right,
to get that specific thing that they actually want, instead of it having to be every school has everything.
Absolutely. I think that's part of the goal of the new trade school, the Mayor's School, and I think that will help bridge the gap tremendously there as well.
All right, and number 3?
So number 3 is really the conversation we've heard over the last few years, and that's parents' rights. So the conversation at some point shifted to the institution being the expert on the child rather than the parent being the expert on the child. Now, certainly the school system is going to have the expertise when it comes to curriculum selection or methodologies, but the parent knows the child. You knew your child was having difficulty even before his grades reflected that. So a lot of times parents will speak up and they're told, no, we as the school system know what's best for your child. We've got to have that ability to have that conversation with parents. The second part of that is with the COVID restrictions, we've really discouraged parents from having the same amount of involvement that they had before. And bringing parents back into the school, I'm not talking about helicopter parents, but I'm talking about parents that can provide additional hands in the classroom and assistance to the teachers as needed. Brings a couple of elements. One, it brings a community feel back to our schools. There's not a lot of trust now between the parents and the system. Two, it also brings an element of accountability. So the parents understand what's going on. They know what's taught. They're not coming to the school board meetings to ask those questions because they can see it in the classroom as well. So bringing a voice back to parents is important. and I recognize there has to be limitations on that. We have a duty to educate students, but parental involvement is still important.
See, that's when I get kind of, I don't know that I have a good personal understanding of how I think that makes sense. Like, I get the idea. I've got elementary age kids specifically. There's always parents around, even through pandemic stuff. There was always some sort of parent involved, especially the lower grades. They have the room mom kind of thing.
Right.
But I don't know, where I get kind of stuck on it is when it comes to these curriculum questions and stuff like that. If I'm not the parent in the classroom, I have to trust my neighbor that I may or may not be particularly fond of for whatever reason. I get the idea, except for I'm not that parent.
Sure.
That's not in my wheelhouse of being able to be that parent on my own. And I think it's a larger cultural situation that's going on. We are not neighbors like my parents were neighbors with their neighbors.
Right.
Like my mom and dad knew the whole neighborhood. Every once in a while, my parents weren't super social, but every once in a while they would go to dinner parties with neighbors and stuff like that. We don't do that. And I don't know if that's just me and my household, but I feel like that's kind of a generational thing.
Absolutely.
Like, our friends aren't our neighbors. Our friends are our friends that have been years, and we travel around town to go see them, where in the generations past, it seemed to be like, my parents, when I was in high school, middle school, like, we had neighborhood block parties once a year, where it was like the whole thing. We shut down a road. Everybody came with their grills and stuff, and we did a big block party. All the kids went crazy, that kind of stuff. We don't do that now.
Right.
And I don't think that's just me. I think that's fairly normal anymore. And so, when a person like myself, who already has some questions and some issues with the way school's going and stuff like that, I can't be the parent in the classroom. But we're advocating to have parents back in the classroom. That ends up being a parent that I don't know either. So what's the difference in a teacher that I don't know and necessarily trust, and a neighbor that I don't necessarily know or trust either? And so again, like, I'm not trying to say it's a bad idea. I don't know how I as a parent in the system fit into this model.
So a couple of examples. First, I think it's just an additional opportunity for engagement that I don't think we should be discouraging, but perhaps we are at this moment in time.
Okay.
So a couple of examples. Let's go back to literacy. So we've got teachers, we've got coaches, tutors, those working in the intervention type setting. So part of that could be a parent is helping with a reading group. So it's an additional resource for the teacher to utilize as desired.
So it's free labor.
Sure.
I mean, I'm not opposed to it. I'm just making. Let's
it's
call an apple an apple.
Community engagement.
Right.
Yeah.
Free labor. Okay. Yeah, I get it. I mean, again, and again, it's not. It's like I said. I think there's an outside cultural force at play. Maybe I'm a little bit in a little bit of a bubble on my personal situation on it, but I don't feel like I'm unique in this. That I don't have as much engagement with my neighbors and stuff like that to feel like it'd be like, okay, well, the teacher doesn't have time because they're busy doing grading and stuff. Let me talk to the classroom teacher, or the classroom assistant, or engaged parent, whatever we're going to call it. And so it's I don't know. Again, maybe it's more me than it is anything else that I'm stuck on it. But I do. I mean, again, I think an understanding of the parents' rights on how their kids are taught and some of that stuff is important to get that engagement back in, is understanding that I can say something about certain things, and I do have a method to interact and move forward, which I think a lot of parents, myself included, they're kind of like, well, I drop them off, I go pick them up, and that's the day.
Right. Yeah. And then fourth, our fourth priority is really teachers and support staff, and how do we support them best? And notice that I didn't just say teachers, because I think the conversation stops a lot of times there. But I also want to include our instructional assistants and our aides and the various support staff in the school, because they're important to helping the teachers as well. So there's a compensation component of that as well. I don't think that's the entire piece of supporting teachers. So if we improved or we increased compensation for teachers and support staff, I don't think we've supported them adequately. So we've got you could read every day the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times. We'll pick your newspaper. There's a story, or at least weekly.
Well, I exist because I don't like those guys, but that's a separate thing.
About teacher attrition. So how do we keep them in the classroom? You've probably seen the charts on the disparity in pay for Knox County versus those outside of Knox County. And part of that's a county commission issue as well. So the school board working with commission on that, but we certainly need to.
See, I don't know the history on that particularly, because that one I've put thought into that one specifically Because it seems to me the couple times I've talked to Ron McPherson and some of the current school board about the budget situation and the funding situation and that whole conversation, it seems to me that the school board builds the budget on expectation.
Right.
And it's like, well, we're going to have this much available. That's how we build the budget, instead of this is how much we want or need to do what we're trying to do. And so as much as, yes, commission is signing off on that, but they're signing off on the request. I would be curious to know, and I'm sure it has happened at some point in history, if a school board budget is presented to the mayor's office and the mayor and the commission have subtracted from that budget outside of what the expectation, even including the expectation. I'd be curious to know how many times that's happened in the past. Because, again, I'm sure it's happened at some point. And I'm sure that's why the standard is set, that they only present a budget up to what they think will be approvable. And so that's an interesting question for the school board is their intent to over ask?
Right.
Is that something that the school board is willing to do currently and in the future?
And I don't know the history of that either. I'd be curious on that as well. But if you look at the budget, which is over $500 million at this point, 83% of that is salaries for teachers, instructional assistants, school management and support, and other related direct student support. So 83% of our $500 million budget is already going to salaries there.
Right, because then that leaves 17% for transportation. No, that's direct. But actual central office admin, which isn't that.
Right.
I mean, that's really not that much money. Because I remember who I was talking to. We were talking about too. It's like, well, we could find some waste, sure, but not enough to make a difference.
Right.
I'm not saying we shouldn't go seek out this waste, but at the end of the day, if we can trim that 17% down to 10,
exactly
7%, yes, 7% of $600 million is a good chunk of change. But when we spread that back out into teacher salaries or however we reassign it, it's not going to be a big bump.
Sure. Yeah, there's not much to trim there. Certainly there's always room to trim a budget, and I think there's a lot of overlap between county government and what some of the school officials do as well. But you're correct. There's not a lot to spread out even once you start trimming. I think the other piece of that is just looking at funding in general. I know you've looked at BEP and tried to figure that out, and we're due tomorrow, I believe, new information from the governor on what that might look like for round two of this.
I mean, I tried. I applied to be on one of the 82 committees or whatever they put together this last year to try to look at a different way to look at funding in schools, and that was not. I ended up being on some newsletter thing that was just a bunch of just blah, a 5-page email of nothing. Because again, I think I've made the joke, and it's too late now, but I made the joke to a bunch of different school board members. Is like, instead of getting a teacher to be our superintendent, let's find us a good lawyer, so that lawyer can start hammering the legal parts onto the state to get the state to give us the money we're supposed to get. Because I think the BEP formula itself is too damn complicated, and to have any expectation of how much we should or shouldn't get and stuff like that, and how much we're getting shorted by the state and blah 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 blah, it's too complicated for the parents, and the parents are the ones that are voting the people in, they're putting these things in place in the first place, and it compounds upon itself to where it's like some of this stuff we were already paying for, and it just kind of falls off into the ether, and we have no recourse on how to deal with that. Because I've had a bunch of commissioners in, obviously, and whether or not we're going to raise property taxes is a big conversation, especially in any election cycle. And of course, everybody says, of course we won't. But I don't know. I mean, part of me is I'm not a pro raising tax person, but at the same time, I would really love to know how much we're being shorted by the state, and I would really love to know if there's any action we could do to get that over here, because it may only be a 5 or 10% difference, but a 5 or 10% difference on $600 million is a good chunk of change. And we add that in with trimming some fat, and all of a sudden we've got at least a more comfortable budget to work with, instead of having to raise taxes to do it.
Right. Yeah. Understanding that BEP is certainly a difficult task, and right now no one knows what that's going to look like.
Anybody that does know is going to have to start their education over.
That's right.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, and the various weights and factors, and now perhaps performance incentives that go into that will be important for Knox County. But that's 45% of our budget that comes from the state through the BEP formula. So certainly an important piece. I don't think folks realize the other components of how the schools are funded as well. And I know you've dug into this as well, but looking at the state or the sales and use tax and the local option piece is the second largest component, followed by property taxes coming in third. So sales and use plus state funding, or local sales and use plus state funding plus property taxes, almost 100% of the budget dollars.
Yeah, I mean, and again, because I think that's another part of the weirdism is because we collect it all here.
Right.
I collect it all, and then I send it to the state, and the state sends a little bit back directly, and then that goes into the county coffers, and then a little bit of back indirectly in whatever else it is. And it's just I don't know. I guess it's like I'm sure it's a whole different version of the conversation when you're out in a rural like a Roane County or something like that, where 100+% of your budget is being funded by the state, and you have no options to add on to it because you can't afford it. So I understand the premise, and then I don't at the same time. Like I get real lost in the idea that, like, I would assume that a Roane County would be significantly cheaper to operate. Like, I don't know. I would wager that Rocky Hill over here is on $1 million piece of property, where that same footprint in Roane County is probably $100,000.
Right.
And so like I get the premise that it I don't know, it should be way cheaper to operate Roane County School District than it is Knox County School Districts per person, but somehow they need some of our money to pay for theirs. I really can't wrap my head around that part of it. It's too much. And then of course we have this voucher thing, which again, it's above your pay grade as a potential school board member, but like this throws a whole nother wrench into this funding conversation, and how these things are going to work. And I'm working right now to try to get a pro and anti-voucher person who actually knows what they're talking about to come in and we'll have a discussion about it, because I really want to understand what they're trying to do. Because again, it's every time I've had conversation about it, and poor John Butler, who's running for District 1, I had yesterday, we ended up spending like 20 minutes on vouchers, and midway through it, we both were like, we're talking past each other, because we don't know what they're trying to do. And I think that's one of the things, because I've had arguments with plenty of people about vouchers because I'm open to the idea, and that pisses people off. But it's like, well, until we can establish what the definition of the voucher system that the state of Tennessee wants to use, I want to hold off. But at the same time, I also know how state legislature works is by the time you actually get a picture of what it is, it's getting passed tomorrow. And so there's no time to really talk about it. So it's a weird system that we have to kind of function within. But I don't know. I get the feeling that it's happening. Like, I don't know that this is an option. And so we got to live with what's coming down the pipeline. And so I think there is valid discussion to have with school board candidates right now. Maybe not about, I mean, I guess the reality here, and again, with some of the new funding formula thing, is whether it's performance incentives or however we want to phrase that, is as a parent, one of the big questions to me is we acknowledge that we're not doing well. I don't think that's a controversial statement. I think for the most part, we can talk to current school board, future school board members, teachers and administrators. And I think that if everybody's being honest about what's going on, is we are not doing great. And maybe well might be a strong adjective to use. We're not doing well at this thing of educating our kids. And, agree or disagree with the format of vouchers, that's fine, but we can't keep doing the same thing and expect better results. And I think that's a valid conversation to have. How do we get better results? Because honestly and statistically, it's not just money. Because I think that's one of the easy answers people like to throw out is we need more money in the schools. And we may. I'm not saying we don't, but statistically, it's not true. I mean, statistically in the state of Tennessee, at least of the major 5 counties, Knox County is right in the middle of both categories. Memphis is top spender, lowest achievements. And then what was it, Johnson City? I can't remember which one it was. Again, it's been a while since I've talked to Ron, but it was either Chattanooga or Johnson City school district had the least expenditure and has the best outcomes. So, because the reality here, as I understand it, the reality here is it's a communal issue. And this is where the conversation between the mayor's office, the commission, and the school board is we have community issues that we need to fix. Because without fixing those, we're not going to fix the schools no matter how we spend money on them. Anyway, I ranted again. But again, I do agree that I think teacher pay is a question. I think total staff pay is an issue because we can't do better with mediocre teachers. And we can't keep good teachers because they're getting paid significantly more in a lower cost of living county right outside the district. And so I don't know, like how do we chase that down? Like what is a step we can take to try to retain and recruit and retain better teachers?
So as I started, compensation is an important piece to that, but I think it's also how do we support our teachers otherwise? Anecdotally, at least, they tell us they're beat down. The last 2 years particularly have been hard, but I think it goes back further than that. So how do we make sure we have the right number of hands in the classroom? How do we make sure we have the right number of supports for those teachers? So we want increased improvement, but we're not willing to give them additional hands to assist with that improvement. I think that's the biggest piece. Compensation's certainly important, but making them feel like they can make a difference by giving them the supports and resources they need is just as important as well.
Right, because again, I think we have a population issue as far as each of our schools. I can't. There's 2-3 schools in the entire county that aren't overpopulated.
Right.
As stands. I mean, we've got a lot of stuff going on. So okay, I don't know. That's is that cover? What else you got on your sheet there that you wanted to talk about?
Those are big priorities there. I think from the voucher conversation, and everyone in the community wants to talk about that because we're reading that on the front page of the papers. But the important piece there is, one, you're correct. That's a state level decision. That's not a local education agency level decision. So Knox County School Board is not going to be making that decision. But two, and this is really an overarching theme, how do we look at student performance and accountability? And I think you're correct. If we can get in a position, no matter what we're looking at, to make sure that is the question. How is this going to impact student performance, and how is it going to impact accountability and achievement for our students?
Well, because I think another one that we have at play that I don't think, I think is just another one of those givens is what are we trying to build? Like, I make this joke all the time, and I avoid saying her name on purpose, but I had an employee, 21 years old, who doesn't know how to write a check.
Right.
You know, and it's like, yeah, I know it's 2022. We don't write a lot of checks anymore. I mean, I write one check, and that's to the tutor that I have for the kid. But prior to that, I'd stopped writing checks in the household. But it's just, I know we have some different ones, especially coming from the state level, but I would love to hear a really in-depth conversation of what a successful Knox County student is. Like, what is the standard set by us, the county, not the state level one? The state can have theirs. That's fine. It's not important because you exist, or the school board locally exists to have the standard that the location wants. Right. And so what do we want out of that? Do we want somebody who needs post-education to get a job? Again, this brings in the whole, there's other cultural things going on. I would argue to death for 9 out of 10 jobs out there, the college degree is just a way to narrow the playing field of candidates. It's not really that I care that you have the degree or not. It's just by requiring the degree, I get to knock 100 people off the list of people I have to talk to look for this job. And but again, if I want a student, what do we want if you graduated from a Knox County high school, what is that person? What do we expect out of them capability wise?
So I think looking at success is really what you're asking for. What does it mean to be a successful student, if you will? I think somebody that's ready for career technical education, the military, university studies, or to enter the workforce. All of those, to me, equates to what success
See, then I think I have the solution. We graduate at 16 instead of 18. Because if it takes more, I mean, I don't know. Realistically, junior, senior year in high school was either playtime for the kids that knew they weren't going any further, or it was prep for college. That's what we did. That's what I did in high school. Like, if you were the kid that either financially or mentally, college was not on the table for you, junior, senior in high school was just kind of screwing around.
But I don't disagree that
how much money would knock in 2 years off the top?
I don't disagree
put it back in.
That those last 2 years are very important for those that will go to college. But I think also going back to the CTE component, that's where we train for the workforce. So if you've identified that student that says, okay, I'm not going to further for university studies, that's not for me, and that's great. Let's ensure that we have those CTE opportunities available for them. There's also a couple of commissioners that have talked to me about financial literacy, and that's really what you're talking about in check writing skills and ensuring that our students have those abilities coming out of high school.
Can you bake a potato? I mean,
that's right.
It's stupid, but it's not. I mean, my kid can make his own mac and cheese. He's a 5th grader. He can make mac and cheese. It's not a super complicated dish, but I know a lot of his friends that they're scared to death of what a pot is. They're like, what do I do with that? I don't know. Mom messes with that. I don't know how to touch that thing. And I think it's, and again, I don't, it's been a couple years, we'll say, since I got out of Knox County schools, but I don't remember, because I moved down here when I was a freshman in high school. I don't remember doing anything home ec here. I did some stuff in middle school back in Wisconsin where I was from, but I don't know that we did any of that here. I don't know. I could be misremembering. It's been a hot minute. Just like 3 or 4 years. People relax. But I mean, yeah, like just because I think one of the crazy things going on right now that I think personal financial literacy is a huge problem. I mean, I think how many check cashing places we got running around town right now, and that is, I mean, I could teach that class already. Don't go there. Don't care. Whatever you got to do, don't go there. I did it once or twice. It was stupid. Like as soon as I did, I was like, "This is dumb." But I was a business major. I should have known better beforehand. But I mean, I think there's a lot of stuff like the way we, and again, this is a cultural, and I mean, I think this would be one of the cultural fixes, or one of the ways to fix some of the cultural problems by using the school system, is getting people that are much more conscious of unsecured debt.
Right.
Getting people much more conscious of some of those financial issues and how to plan for X, Y, and Z that we don't really focus on anymore. And I mean, honestly, having a trade and the ability to go to work is a good thing. But I have employees now who, we pay decent. We don't pay super awesome, but we don't pay terrible, who can't afford an apartment. And it's like, you can. You just need to stop doing this, stop doing that, or you need to figure out how to manage your money better. It's not about what I'm paying you being the problem. It's about how you spend your money. And it's like, that's not my job as your boss to make those decisions for you. I'll help you out. We're friends, whatever. But, we got one guy that's worked for us for a hot minute who he broke a tire, hit a curb or something, broke a tire, and it's some sports car thing. And it's like a $1,200 tire. And it's like, dude, why buy a new tire? He's like, no, he Ubers back and forth to work every day. And it's like, how much are you spending on this Uber? We could just fix your freaking tire.
Expensive method of transportation.
Yeah, and it's just one of those, I can't figure out how that gap happened. That and the dude owns a second car that doesn't work too, and it's like, well, sell that one right now, especially with the used car market the way it is. You can probably get twice as much as that thing's worth right now, even though it's not working correctly either. But you can get your tire fixed and you can start driving to work and stuff. But for whatever reason, that's just not the method. That's not the plan. I don't know where that disconnect came from in his life, but I'm going to blame it on schools. I don't know if it's true or not. I like to blame a lot of things on schools, but I do. I think financial literacy. I think just some general, like life 101 kind of thing is important, because I think you're not going to really get it in college. You might get it in some of those freshman orientation kind of things. You might get a little bit of it there, but if that's not the path, and you're going out there and you're going to be a mechanic or an HVAC installer or something like that, you need to know how to manage your own money. And if we're not teaching them that, how are they learning that? Right. And it's like, yeah, parents should be doing a good part of that too, but that's part of what we put on the schools as a responsibility, is filling some gaps when a parent fails in some of those lessons that should have been taught by a mom or dad. And so, anyway, I don't know. I ran along with that, but I do. I think it's I think that's interesting. I'm gonna have to think more on that one.
I think that's the right conversation to have, though. Is what does student success look like, and how do we get there?
Yeah.
So I like that conversation, because it doesn't feel like that's the conversation we've had the last few years.
Right.
And that's really what's important to our community.
Right. And I think something that I've come to realize on a couple of different things is, I think part of the politics is part of the problem here. Right. Because some of the solutions are long-term solutions. Right. And you don't get credit for it. Right. Because you will term out before things kick in. And I think I'm not advocating for longer terms or something like that. I don't know what the solution to that one is, but I think just a general awareness of the idea that this is a long term. Some of these are long term things. This is stuff that goes in now that kindergartners 3 years from now will actually get to start doing. So you're going to be termed out before these kids are in 5th grade, and so to be able to pin that and say, I did that, is going to be past term, and it changes the way politics works. And I think that's a concern that I have as I'm starting to think about it, that I think people need to be aware of. And I think people need to support the idea of long-term stuff out of politicians, even though it goes past their thing. And they need to be aware of that when critiquing a decision. Because one of the things commission talks about a lot is, infrastructure is always a conversation. It's like, well, we can't build a road to nowhere. And it's like, yeah, but if in 10 years that road gets filled up and you don't have to play catch-up infrastructure, you look like a genius. But I'm not there anymore. And so it's, I get it, but I think it's part of the process that we as the public need to get more engaged with and more understanding with. Because I'm not running for office. I can call the voters out. I can tell them it's the voters' fault. We made this thing. This is where we are. We did this as voters. Maybe not me personally, because I haven't voted that long and stuff like that, but we created this mess, and we have the power to take it back, and we need to start exercising that power and understanding our role in it. Vote better.
Absolutely. The long-term view is important, and I do a lot of work in the disability-related fields. I serve on the Tennessee Council for Developmental Disabilities and Tennessee Council for Autism Spectrum Disorder. Those were appointments by Governor Haslam and Governor Lee. But in those settings, you really get the feel for what's the long-term needs of the community. You can't look short-term. So even though we may spend $1 today, that might save us $20 later. But we've got to do a better job of communicating that to the community and also to commission.
Yeah. And with inflation, it could be 45.
That's right.
These are the jokes, people. That's what we do. But yeah, I'm sorry, I interrupted again.
No, just taking the long-term view is certainly important for success as well.
All right. Well, I don't know. Is there anything else you want to go over? And then we'll get into the 5 questions segment.
So obviously we're in the heart of District 4. Excited to be running in this race. Excited about the opportunity to meet a lot of folks in District 4.
See, these interviews always scare me because these are actually my neighbors.
That's right.
Where like most of the time I'm talking to people, and if I, when I'm mean to voters on the show, it's like, well, it's District 7. Who cares? They're way over there. They won't see me. But these are this is my neighborhood.
That's right. I could throw a baseball and hit your house from mine. So excited to be out and about, and looking forward to meeting the voters of District 4. I'm on the Republican primary ballot. Don't have a challenger on that ballot, and there's also a Democrat in the race that will be on the general ballot as well come August.
Yeah, Catherine Bike. I have her in a week or so.
Excellent.
Okay, so 5 question segment.
Okay.
All right, so there are 5 questions. They're all super important. If you answer them incorrectly, you will lose a foot. Number 1 is your personal political history and future. So 1A is this your first time running for office?
It is my first time.
Okay, and so then 1B is assuming you get elected now and maybe run for a second term as far as the school board goes. Is there future politics that you want for? Do you see yourself maybe moving into commission or a mayor's race or maybe a state house seat or something like that down the road?
So I've got a busy law practice. I can't imagine leaving that for politics. The school board and commission type setting for me, school board makes sense. But to directly answer your question, no, I don't have any aspirations for that. You can't predict what's going to happen in the future, but that's not why I'm in this race.
Okay, so I'm going to amend. I'm going to step out of 5 questions because that just reminded me of something real quick. It's like 22, whatever terribly low amount because it's a part-time job as far as school board goes. But I've heard some conversation running around about potentially changing commission and school board into full-time positions with the state as opposed to being part-time positions. Do you feel like the salary for this job is important for the people who are seeking it?
I don't think you should get into this job for the salary.
But do you feel like there is any concern that the lack of salary excludes some people that may want it but can't?
Possibly, but as I've talked to folks across that have served currently on the board and those in the past, I think most people feel like this is really service.
Right.
So to the extent that you're looking at this as a community service opportunity, salary is generally not going to preclude you from jumping into that role. It may be a reallocation of your time elsewhere for other efforts.
Right.
But I'm not sure that a low salary threshold would preclude someone from serving on the Board of Education.
Okay, cool. Again, it just popped in my head. Question 2, back on the actual list here, is what is your favorite ice cream?
So ice cream right across the street here at Brewster's, a big cheesecake ice cream guy.
That is 2 school board specific people that have mentioned Brewster's as their favorite place to get ice cream. And what was the flavor?
The cheesecake ice cream over there.
It does sound good. I'm going to do that. All right.
It is.
All right, going to Brewster's later. Dang it.
Warm summer nights at Brewster's.
I'll tell you what, I need to get on Kyle Ward to get us a light put up for their parking lot or something.
There we go.
Because it gets pretty crazy trying to get in and out of there from time to time. All right, so and then on that, continuing on the food portion of the show is what's your favorite place to eat around here?
So we'll stay in District 4. Obviously, the hot to-go items for us are Soccer Taco and Casa. But if we're going to have a sit-down dinner, probably over at Kazi's in North Shore Town Center.
That's a good one. I like that one. All right, and see, you're no fun because everybody else gives me places I don't know about. And so it's like, oh, I'm going to have to go check that place out. All right, going back to it, and you mentioned a little bit of it in your precursor to the 5 questions. Do you feel like partisanship elections, specifically in school board, are a benefit to me for voting?
Sure, I go back and forth on this. I think this is a unique time to be running just because of the COVID-related issues and all of the issues we've had over the last 2 years. So when it comes to kind of the issues I've talked about and narrowing the field, and for the voter determining, okay, what does this person believe in, and kind of what are those foundational issues that this person might believe in. I think it might be helpful this time around. In general, I think it's a challenge. I think it makes the races more expensive, just because of the nature of a primary and a general versus perhaps a runoff election, or perhaps not under the old system. So from that perspective, I don't like the nature of the partisanship. At the same time, folks say, well, that's the voter. What about the student? I think it's important for the students to be front and center, and for folks to have that focus on student success rather than partisanship and those type of issues. So I think that we can keep it partisan, but also student focused. So a long way to answer your question. I have mixed feelings on the partisanship in school board races, but I think it's important for exposing those foundational issues.
All right, that works for me. And number 5 is you are a Republican, as you mentioned, and running as a Republican. Tell me about a Democrat that you like a lot. Can be local. I prefer it to be local, but it could be state or federal if that makes sense to you.
Sure. On the local side, we've got 2 Democrats on commission. They work well with their colleagues. I think our commissioners work well together. So particularly those 2 are important. I think Ms. Satterfield on the school board, who's not up for re-election.
There are a couple. There's some good candidates running for one, but I'm bummed that she decided to step
right.
out.
And I think she's served her district and the school board well. So those 2 on
and
the
to
local
be fair,
side.
She wasn't officially a Democrat then because it wasn't.
That's right.
Back then.
That's right. Absolutely.
Although it's pretty clear, it's not like we're not guessing here on her political leanings, but
right.
Okay, cool. Give me plug it up for me. Tell me to tell people how to get a hold of your campaign website, Facebook page, whatever it is you like to do.
Absolutely. So website's edwards4education.com, spelled out. That's a pet peeve of mine when people use the number 4. So spelling that out. So edwards4education.com.
See, but it's doubly complicated here, and I want to make sure we're clear. It's not spelled out the number 4. It's FOR.
That's right, FOR.
Because it is District 4, so FOUR would work too.
That's right.
If you want to do it that way. So all right. So say it again.
Edwards4education.com.
FOR people. Okay.
And then on Facebook, Will Edwards for School Board will get you to my page as well.
And I'll link those up through the show notes, and as well as on my voter guide thing that I'm working on as well. All right, I think that's all I've got. Is there anything else you want to know?
I think that's it. Thanks, Seth, for your good work in the community and putting these out there.
Well, we'll see. We'll see if anybody listens. But I appreciate you coming out. I appreciate doing them. Like if nothing else, at least this one particularly actually matters to me personally, because like I said, next week I think I have Miss Bike, and I can start working on my decision for what I'm going to do with my ballot. So if nothing else, I get some information out of it. So all right, outro, and we'll call it a day. All right, everybody, that was Mr. Edwards for School Board number 4. So anyway, we're almost in agreement @gmail.com. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on YouTube. We are also sort of kind of on Instagram, so you can follow us there as well, and we're going to start doing a little bit more there. The website's the way to go, almostinagreement.com. You can go there. That gets my voter guide that, as we were talking about. It's going to have a link to this show for Mr. Edwards, as well as a link to his website, and then all the other candidates. And it's going to be broken down by races and districts and all that kind of fun stuff. And then on that page as well is KGIS and Knox County Election Commission. You can make sure you're registered. If you're not, you can go through the process of getting registered. It'll tell you which district you're in, what your voting locations are, all that kind of stuff. And pretty soon here, I'm sure Chris Davis at the Election Commission, we're going to start getting those sample ballots out so you can actually start seeing what you're going to see on Election Day. Go to your favorite podcast provider. Please subscribe there. Give us a 5-star rating and review. Tell your friends about us. Please help us get the word out. We're going to keep going. I'm starting to look into the state races as we're starting to sort of get to the at least the second half of all these county races. But we're going to keep working through as many as we can get our hands on. And for those I can't get in, we're going to actually try to do at least a little bit of mini episode on them anyway. So, almost agreement, everybody. Thank you.